Okay. Good morning everyone. Welcome po sa webinar natin today. Today we have course number 7 of the FilSciHub Research University, the thesis writing process. So ito po ang 7th of the 8th mandatory course for FilSciHub Research University. And today we are joined by Professor Joanne Aguila of the Institute of Chemistry at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, to deliver this webinar. Okay, so we kindly request everybody to mute or turn off their video for a while, unless to pose a question on the Q&A portion later, para po hindi siya kumain ng bandwidth. We request everybody to just turn off their videos and mute so as not to interfere with our speaker for this morning. And no recording of the webinar, as the full video of the event will be posted on YouTube. So we are now live on YouTube. So good morning po sa mga YouTube participants natin. And there you will find the full recording of the webinar this morning. Okay. So sa mga nagtatanong po, certificates of participations are always issued in all of our events, and we will post the Google form link. We devised this issuance of certificates of participation via Google Forms, and the link will be provided on the chat box here in Zoom and also on the chat box on YouTube. So kindly wait for the link, which will be posted towards the end po. So hindi po namin siya ibibigay sa gitna ng webinar, but towards the end. Okay. So after the event, if you miss the link, you can always go back to the recorded video on YouTube, and there you will find the Google form link on the video description after the event. And of course, we require that all the participants who will receive their certificates of participation to subscribe to our official FilSciHub YouTube and Facebook group. There. Okay,
all right, so
to introduce our group, I will call on our FilSciHub founder and CEO, Dr. Jeffrey Bungkin.
actually, before we get there, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize one of our members,
Yep.
for a couple of very recent recognition. So, first and foremost, magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat sa Pilipinas. Ako po ulit si
And
Jeffrey
also
Bungkin.
happy Independence Day po pala sa lahat. Yeah, sa lahat ng mga teachers, sa lahat ng mga estudyante, sa mga ating mga makabagong bayani. Happy Independence Day po.
Opo, maligayang araw po ng kalayaan. So, before po namin i-introduce ako ano ang platform para po sa mga bago nating mga participants, ang hirap tagalogin ng participants. Para sa lahat po ng ating mga audience members, so I would like to take this opportunity to recognize one of our most active members, and he's actually one of the members of our leadership team. So I'm talking about Mr. John Marty Mateo. So John Marty Mateo po very recently has been appointed as one of the heads of our FilSciHub education program. And he recently bagged a couple of prestigious recognitions. So the first of which is the Best Paper Award by the National Academy of Science and Technology. So just to give you an idea po, so then the National Academy of Science and Technology is, I think, like one of the top tier, or if not like the highest organization in the country when it comes to science and technology. And on a yearly basis po, they select a very few numbers of papers that are published in a particular year, and like those which they consider to have very significant impacts to fundamental science and even to applied areas. And John Marty Mateo was involved in a research program about Philippine mango. So that has been recently recognized. So I would like I would like to ask you the favor of giving him a virtual applause. This is like a very rare recognition that one that scientists in the Philippines can actually get. And then, when it rains, it pours, sabi ko nga po. He was also recently recognized as the Institute of Plant Breeding's Outstanding Junior Researcher Awardee. So, and why are we sharing this? So this is also to show you all po that, like the people behind FilSciHub and behind FilSciHub Research University are indeed award-winning researchers po in the country, and also wherever they go. So Marty, congratulations once again. Actually, Marty is going to be the moderator for this event. So JP and I just wanted to open the session and be able to congratulate him. So again, muli po maraming salamat sa inyong pagluhok sa atin ngayong umaga. And to introduce FilSciHub, I would actually like to turn the floor over to our head of to our Vice President for Communications and External Affairs, so si Dr. Janice Abrela, who's dialing in all the way from Kansas here in the US. Janice, JP, could you reshare your screen, please?
Hello. Narinig niyo?
Yes.
Hi, so magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Bago ang lahat, maligayang araw ng kalayaan sa ating lahat. Magpapakilala muna kami para sa mga first time umattend ng webinar na ito bago tayo magsimula at mapunta kay Professor Aguila. So, kami po sa FilSciHub ay mga Pinoy scientists na nakabase sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Our board members are Professor Dean DeVoyles, who is based in the USA, sa Kentucky. JP Onya, who is currently doing his PhD in Finland. Professor Joanne Aguila and Marty Mateo, who are both based in the Philippines. And of course, our founder and CEO, Dr. Jeffrey Bunkin. So our mission is to promote STEM education and a culture of research among students and teachers in the Philippines. Next slide, please. So FilSciHub has two main programs. The first one is the FSH Ed program or educational program. And the next one is the FilSciHub Research University, which both aim to create a new generation of STEM practitioners. So our education program shall empower our STEM educators and research our STEM educators, and this research university aims to bring real-life scientists closer to the educational sector. So next. So we have come a long way po since FilSciHub resurrected last May 2020, since this pandemic happened. We've covered various topics in agriculture to fungi biology to data science and many more. So please feel free to access our past webinars or materials and online events on our website, www.filscihub.com, or on our YouTube channel. So just search FilSciHub sa YouTube nyo at magpa-pop out na yung YouTube channel namin. And to further give you an insight on our different programs, here's my co-head at the FilSciHub Ed program, Marty Mateo. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jaja. I will take it from here. So I will introduce you to the FilSciHub education program. So our main purpose is to empower STEM educators. So right now we have more than 30,000 FilSciHub followers sa Facebook po natin na platform. So we envision that this academic frontliners will have 30 students per year na ma-mentor po nila sa STEM, and with that in a span of their 30-year career, since halos po lahat ng aming followers ay early career practitioners, we are envisioning around 27 million students na pwedeng magkaroon ng impact ang FilSciHub. And even if only 1% of those students will go to the STEM track, that will translate to around 270,000 students, STEM students or STEM practitioners in the future. And that will help increase the number of scientists and engineers in the Philippines in the future para po makahabol tayo sa ating Southeast Asian neighbors na mataas po yung kanilang number of scientists per million of population. Next slide, please. So we also launched during the onset of the pandemic teaching webinars, especially regarding the online teaching. So if you missed this and you want to learn more about online platforms on teaching, it's still uploaded in our YouTube account. So we have seasoned educators from the US, yung pong mga resource speakers na kinuha namin for this teaching webinars. Next slide, please. And also, we recently launched yung aming pong modules program. So it tackles biology, chemistry, and physics na curated modules. So ito po ang aming mga tagagawa ng modules, na IMG Aguila, Ivy Rituya, and Mark Cortez. All are students and graduates of the BS Mathematical and Science teaching program from UPLB. So yung pong aming modules ay may teaching guides, class activities, and problem sets. Lahat po ito ay naka-upload based per subject sa aming website www.filscihub.com. So if you want to access those modules, punta lang po kayo sa aming website. Next slide, please. I guess si Kuya JP can discuss this, the Fuse FilSciHub STEM Teaching Webinar Series. Kuya JP, take it away.
Thank you, Marty. So recently we have launched this FilSciHub Fuse FilSciHub STEM Teaching Webinar Series. That is a cooperation between Fuse, or the Foundation of for the Upgrading of the Standards of Education, Fuse, and this is a member of the Lusitan Group of Companies, and also one of the premier universities in the educational sector, which will be announced soon. Pinoformalize pa lang po yung memorandum of agreement with this prestigious university. And here we try to bring in pedagogical training courses and also innovative STEM courses para po sa mga teachers natin for high school. And ayun po, this will be a webinar series, and with the following topics. It will run its course from May. We already have started actually last May 22, and this will run its course until August 28. So ito po yung mga included na topics dun sa STEM teaching webinar series. Okay. So we also have the possibility to issue CPD units for the teachers who will participate in this webinar series. And we're also in the process of application for the CPD units issuance. So kindly stay tuned lang po for announcements and participate in all of these courses para po makakuha kayo ng CPD units which are offered for free. Okay, so this entire webinar series is offered with no charge, free of charge, and ayun po. Hopefully we can formalize the CPD units issuance for this training series. Okay. So apart from the webinar series, meron po tayong pilot run for the fellowship program. So ito pong fellowship program is two parts. We have the webinar training series and also a workshop for STEM educators to apply their pedagogical and practical STEM teaching skills in creating and delivering instructional materials, i.e. modules, STEM related modules, and they will be trained under a seasoned set of educators and scientists for this program, and to try to learn and innovate practical approaches to STEM teaching and experience mentorship from seasoned educators and scientists, and also collaborate with fellow educators in delivering and creating STEM-related modules. Ayun po. So, separate po yung CPD units for this pilot run, and since we're only dealing with a very small number kasi pilot run pa lang po ito. So, pakiantabayanan po yung post namin regarding the participation for the pilot run, because we only take in 20 participants for this for now, and we plan to upscale this hopefully next year. Okay, so may qualifications po kasi 20 lang po yung slots for the pilot run. Now, as Janice mentioned earlier, another arm of the Filipino Science Hub is the FilSciHub Research University. And in this webinar series, we are focusing on scientific research and all of its different aspects. Here we try to bring in the best practices in terms of scientific investigation, and we also try to share our own research experiences to students who are carrying out their research projects, and some tips and advice on that. So the FilSciHub Research University is composed of 8 mandatory courses. So we start with the research ideation, literature review, and now we are on to our 7th and second to the last training course for FilSciHub Research University, the thesis writing process. So open pa rin po yung Google Classroom natin for those who want to participate in this program. So basically, when you enter the Google Classroom, makikita nyo po yung past recordings ng mga courses, and also the certificate issuance for each of those courses. So when you watch the recorded video for each course, you are entitled for a certificate of participation for that course. And if you complete all of the 8 mandatory courses for FilSciHub Research University, we will issue a completion certificate, and also you're also eligible for the formal handover or the formal commencement ceremony coming this July. Okay, so we're on to the 7th, and next month we will have the last course, which is the poster and conference presentation course for FilSciHub Research University. All right. So yung mechanics po nung pag-participate sa Google Classroom is summarized in this info webinar that we launched last January. So we will also send the link for this video, and kindly watch out lang po dun sa email issuing your certificate of participation for this webinar. Okay? So ayan po. FilSciHub is always present in all of our platforms, mainly our website at www.filscihub.com, and Facebook, where we have 30,000 followers and counting, and also on YouTube we have already 11,000, I guess, subscribers, and even on TikTok. And there in all of our platforms you will find our webinars and tutorials, modules, virtual labs, and special features. Okay. So I will hand over the screen now to Marty to introduce our speaker for today.
Kuya JP, so ito pong ay isa again sang mapagpala po sa ating lahat. Happy Independence Day to everyone. So for today, we will have our 7th course sa FilSciHub University. That's the thesis writing process, best practices from a thesis advisor. And I will hand over the virtual floor to Kuya Jeff to introduce our speaker.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right. So kung nakita niyo po, pasapasahan lang kami sa pag-facilitate nitong event na to. And this is how it's actually done. So muli, magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. And it's actually my great honor and privilege to introduce our speaker for today. So before she is a speaker to you, she's actually a mentor to me. So yun po. I really wanted to introduce her. So our speaker for today will actually talk about thesis writing and essentially share with you some of the best practices based off of her years worth of experience, mentoring thesis students. Ang ating speaker po ngayon is Professor May Joanne Aguila. So Professor May Joanne Aguila is currently an Associate Professor of Chemistry at the Institute of Chemistry at UP Los Baños. So she actually earned her Bachelor of Science in Chemistry degree from the from the University of the Philippines in Los Baños, graduating cum laude. After that, she took up her master's and PhD degrees in both in chemistry at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And then shortly after that, she actually received the Marie Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship. This is actually a competitive international fellowship in chemistry. From 2014, and she actually from 2014 to 2015, and she worked as a researcher at DSM Innovative Synthesis at the Netherlands. So she actually had both academic and industry experience. So at the moment, she's busy, educating our college students in UPLB. And she's also running and leading her own research group where they currently focus their efforts around the applications of inorganic chemistry and organometallic chemistry for a wide range of catalytic transformations, which cover biomass upgrading to value-added chemicals and as well as environmental remediation. So I cannot emphasize enough how lucky everyone is in the audience to experience essentially the teaching of my own mentor, Professor May Joanne Aguila. So Ate, take the floor away.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So that's a very wonderful introduction. Mabuhay po sa ating lahat mga Pilipino. So Independence Day po natin ngayon. And isa sa mga activity ng FilSciHub ay hopefully ma-relieve natin yung stress ng mga students kapag nag-iisip yung thesis. Okay? So let me share my slides. So can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So actually, what I have in here is a thesis writing process, but I will give a glimpse of the thesis process itself. And I will give you some tips na na-acquire ko when I was a student myself and now as a thesis advisor to my students. So Jeff already mentioned actually my educational background, but I just want to emphasize it a little bit more because this is actually where I gathered my experience. So I started off as a BS chemistry student, and one of the requirements is the writing or submission of the thesis or independent research. So that's in UPLB. And then for a while, I worked as an instructor. During this time, hindi pa naman ako nakapag-handle ng thesis advising. Okay, but among friends, so yung mga students na naging friends, so I give some feedback or advice kung ano yung magandang thesis, topic, and so on. And then eventually, I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. So dito, I got my PhD and medyo tumaas yung level ng thesis writing experience na nakuha ko dito kasi syempre iba na yung level of understanding kapag PhD. And then I went on to do my postdoc in the Netherlands. So here, while I didn't write thesis, I helped students, so master students and PhD students in the conduct of their research and as well as in interpreting the results and writing yung interpretations nila dun sa result. And then I went back to UPLB in 2015. And since then, so I have had produced 9 undergraduate students na nakapagtapos ng BS Chem, so with their independent research, so may thesis sila, and 2 graduate students. And yung experience na i-share ko sa inyo ngayon would be a collection of my own experience as a student and kung ano yung mga hits and misses dito sa mga na subaybayan kong mga bata. So before anything else, ano ba yung thesis? Dito kasi sa BS Chem, sa mga students, kapag naririnig na, kapag third year na, so pag third year BS Chem na, medyo hindi na sila ganun ka-relax kasi ito na yung time na dapat na silang mag-isip kung sino yung thesis advisor nila, kung ano yung magiging thesis topic nila. So, they think of it like a struggle. So, dapat hindi naman ganun. Pero, so ano ba talaga yung thesis? So, isa siya sa mga requirements actually ng most of the Bachelor of Science degree program here in the Philippines. If I'm not mistaken, nasa CHED mandate yun. So merong independent research na gagawin dapat yung bata. It can be as an individual, so gagawin niya individually, or maybe a group of 2 or a group of 3. Okay. But nonetheless, a thesis is a requirement for graduation. Siguro yun yung nagiging tumatatak sa mga students na hindi ako makaka-graduate kung hindi ako makakatapos ng thesis. Kaya medyo negative yung approach sa thesis. So among the definitions na nakita ko, I choose this definition. So it is a long piece of writing based on your own ideas and research that you do as part of a university degree. So nasabi ko nga kanina, usually it is a requirement for graduation to get your say bachelor's degree. Pero I like yung napaka-direct nung meaning na it is a long piece of writing. So long piece, so mahaba siya. So since mahaba siya, medyo kailangan pagtuunan mo ng pansin kung paano mo siya isusulat. And then itong part na to na I highlighted in yellow, so your own ideas and research. So may input ka talaga doon sa thesis na gagawin mo. Kasi ginawa mo yung, say, kung you conducted science research, so you conducted the science research, nakakuha ka ng results doon, tapos you build up your ideas, and you collect them together and have a bound manuscript about it, and that's your thesis. So a thesis is another way of science communication. So it is a technical document that you can use to communicate your scientific work. So diba, in the past, meron kaming seminar about the different scientific communication. So yung thesis, isa siyang example ng science communication at medyo specific siya kasi may end result doon na ma-achieve mo yung degree mo kapag na tapos mo yung thesis. So this is the thesis process na na-introduce naman sa atin yung mga first 2 parts. Yung first part is the proposal stage, or usually we call this as an outline stage. So, di ba, we had seminars about how to make a proposal. So similar to that, yung outline stage. So in here, so sa outline stage, papakita mo kung ano yung topic na gusto mong gawin, kung ano yung problem na gusto mong i-tackle and hope to address, and then what are the approaches na nakita mo that will help you solve yung problem na gusto mong i-address. And then usually in UPLB, this is presented in a panel of maybe 3 to 4 faculty members. So the student will present it formally para i-accept ng advisory committee, and then once it is accepted, yun na yung start ng kanyang thesis process. And then the second step is experimentation. So we also had some seminar about this, yung mga design of experiment na gagawin mo. Actually part yun ng outline, pero dito mo talaga, kung meron kang laboratory work, dito ka magpo-focus sa experimentation. So ito yung medyo madugo na part kasi ito yung, especially kapag hands-on yung mga experiment mo, pupunta ka sa lab, gagawin mo yung experiment, and then you will really face kung mag-work o hindi yung mga experiment mo, and then you have to continuously think kung paano mo ipapa-work. Okay, so I was muted. Nagkaka-problema yung Zoom ko. So, experimentation. So, nandito yung continuous na pag-gather mo ng information, ng result. So, towards answering your scientific problem. Tapos, lastly, after nung first two stages, ito na yung manuscript. So, yung thesis or manuscript. So, this will be the focus actually of my talk. And then I will give some tips also sa defense. Although I think the next webinar after this would be about scientific communication in a way that you're doing it in an oral presentation. Yun ata yung sunod after nito. So very short lang. One slide lang actually yung tips ko about defense. So, ano ba yung thesis? So, I as a thesis advisor, ano yung titignan ko sa thesis na isasubmit mo sa akin? So, it should be a critical analysis of the problem that we agreed upon that you will work on. So, when we say critical analysis, so it should be a well-reasoned line of argument. So, meron kang mga arguments na ipe-present doon at hindi mo naman kinuha yung mga arguments mo kung saan-saan. It should be backed up by evidence and by literature. So you have an initial question, di ba? This is your problem. So you state your initial question and you should be able to answer your scientific question in your thesis. So you have a compilation of evidence in your thesis. So you gather evidence using your carefully designed methods and approaches. So mahalaga yon. Hindi basta-basta nagtrabaho ka, may ginawa ka, pero dapat pinag-iisipan mo kung ano yung ginawa mo o gagawin mong method. Okay. And then setting the data in a general or universal context. So in this case, dapat yung results na nakuha mo, yung mga evidence na nakuha mo, these are clearly defined do sa thesis mo and discussed in the context of the topic. So, syempre, ipoprove mo yung evidence mo na answer mo doon sa scientific question. So, dapat ang discussion mo ay in line with the topic. And then, making final judgment based on your analysis in here, it is important to have a relevant literature that you should cite and you should highlight the implications of your research. So, ito yung general model that I found. So you have a topic, okay, and then you make some claims, and you back it up with some reasons. So the topic, so yung general model is, the topic is whatever your claim is because whatever your reason is. So ito yung underlying thesis statement or yung thesis mo, basically. Dito, iikot yung thesis mo. So, meron kang topic, meron kang problem, meron kang initial claims and you will back it up with evidence. So basically that's your claims. And then you explain the evidence. So your reason. So ngayon, ano ba talaga yung nasa thesis manuscript? So we know already na it is a critical analysis. It is a way to communicate the science that you did for a semester or two. Okay. I'm using this because in the previous seminar, diba, yung sa science sa communication, JP mentioned to us already yung lab report. So yung lab report, ito yung component niya. Okay. So basically, yung thesis is a collection of lab report. So for example, meron kang isang method, yun yung pinocus mo doon sa isang lab report mo. So ginawa mo tong mga to as recommended by JP. Ang gagawin mo sa thesis mo, parang 3 or more of this, i-collect mo. Pero ang tricky part doon, paano mo siya i-collect in such a way na cohesive pa rin yung presentation mo and you are able to impart better understanding dun sa problem and how you answer the problem. And then Jeffrey as well in the same webinar, he showed us yung effective way of writing scientific paper. So basically, I think his approach here is with respect to a journal article. So ito yung basics part ng journal article. So may abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, and ano ba yung nasa dulo? Kasi ko makita. Conclusions, I think, and some recommendations. Okay? So, yung journal usually, so when you submit your research to a journal, usually ang sinasubmit natin doon yung mga success stories. Okay? Yung mga success stories. Diba? Yun yung sinasubmit natin sa journals. Ngayon, yung thesis, ano yung thesis? Yung thesis, collection din siya ng mga journal article, ng mga scientific report. Kaya lang, instead of just focusing on the success stories, actually, I think what is more developing or will impart growth, yung mga hindi success stories. Sasama mo din yun sa thesis mo. So, sabi ko nga sa mga estudyante ko, lahat ng ginawa mo, isama mo sa thesis mo. Be it successful or not. Kasi ginawa mo yon. And this is the best way that you're able to communicate to people o kung sino man yung magbabasa ng manuscript mo na ginawa mo to pero unfortunately hindi siya nag-work. So, para sinabi mo na rin, huwag mo nang gawin yan kasi hindi yan mag-work. Or ginawa ko to, nag-work, okay, ito yung sundin natin na process kasi ito yung nag-work. Okay? So, sa UPLB, this is the common format ano yung meron sa undergraduate thesis, in particular sa BS Chemistry, so sa Institute of Chemistry. So meron tayong title page, okay, permission who can access, this is also called as the intellectual property right page, and then acceptance page. So this is a page wherein ina-accept ng advisory committee yung thesis as indeed a partial as a requirement for the completion ng degree program. And then, may mga nakita tayong mga words dito na similar doon sa scientific report na journal and the lab report. Those include yung abstract, yung introduction, objectives, maybe a little bit about the time and place of the study, yung RRL, materials and method, results and discussion, summary and conclusions, and recommendation. The other aspects actually included siya, pero usually yung highlighted ko in red, these are the ones that tends to be the bottleneck in writing the thesis. Kasi parang ito talaga yung substance ng thesis mo eh. So, ano ba yung babasahin doon sa thesis mo? Usually, itong mga highlighted sa red. Okay. So, dito nahihirapan yung mga students kung paano sila magsisimula, kung saan sila magsisimula. Yung mga what is in the following, okay, kung ano ba itong mga to, ng mga sections na to, actually, Jeffrey and JP already mentioned that in their webinar. So, they outline what it is, kung ano yung usual na nakikita doon. So, ang ibibigay ko na lang sa inyo yung mga suggestions ko and recommendations kung ano yung nandito sa mga to. And I think ang more important thing na mai-impart ko is where to start. So, let me go back. Kasi di ba medyo ang daming parts to eh. Abstract, introduction, objectives. At ito talaga yung pagkakasunod-sunod nung pag binuksan mo yung manuscript. So una mong makikita yung abstract, introduction, bago yung results and discussion, and summary and conclusion. Okay? Pero, my recommendation in writing your thesis is this. So where will you start? I recommend that you start in the results and discussion. So, sa Institute of Chemistry kasi pinagsasama namin yung results and discussion. Pero doon ko nire-recommend usually mag-start yung mga student. And then, I think you can go about either introduction or summary and conclusion. Maybe writing the summary and conclusion is a little bit is easier kasi i-gather mo yun sa results and discussion mo. Tapos yung introduction mo, it has a different approach kasi dapat i-introduce mo yung topic mo and how you approach it para na-excite sila. And then you have your recommendation. And then ang pinaka-last ko talaga na nire-recommend na isulat ay yung abstract. Okay, yung abstract. In fact, usually, yung manuscript ng mga students ko, it will go about a minimum of 2 readings by me. So babasahin ko siya ng 2 beses. Yung una, medyo mas madugo yun. Okay? So, yun talaga yung mas tinutuunan ko ng pansin, yung unang pagsusulat. Okay? And then, yung pangalawa, so mga minor changes na lang, usually grammar errors, punctuation, and so on. Tapos saka ko pa lang sila pinagsusulat ng abstract. Kasi yung abstract, I believe, yung content nito kasi, since it is an overview ng manuscript, dapat alam mo na muna kung ano yung nasa results mo at discussion mo, ano yung paano mo siya gustong i-convey or simulan or i-attract yung attention ng reader. At ano yung mga summary and conclusion mo. So, dapat alam mo muna yung mga yan bago ka makapagsulat ng abstract. So, this is the flow kung paano ko usually nire-recommend sila na magsulat. Especially yung first part. So, dito talaga yung medyo mas tutok ako pag nag-check ako ng manuscript. So, ano ba yung results and discussion? So, yung results and discussion, I write it here. This is the story of your research lifetime so far. So, kung undergraduate kayo, yun dapat yung story ng research work nyo. So, lagi kong sinasabi sa mga students ko na you should build up your story. So, tingnan mo kung paano mo i-build up yung story mo. Kung paano mo, ano ba yun, payayabungin yung kwento ng research mo. Okay? Minsan kasi, yung story mo, madali lang siya if it really follows sequentially as you did it. So, di ba, nagawa ka ng experiment, tapos yung results mo, meron ka nakuha doon. And then yung story na binibuild mo, madali siya, mas madali kung directly it follows yung sequences ng paggagawa mo. Okay? Pero most of the time, hindi kasi ganon. Most of the time ang nangyayari, so you have your intended experiment and your expected result. Unfortunately, hindi mo nakukuha yung expected result. So, syempre, i-address mo yon, gagawa ka ulit ng new experimentation. So, sa story mo, paano mo siya bubuuin? Parang hindi mo na siya pwedeng directly i-copy yung flow with the way that you did your methodology. So, medyo, ito yung mabulaklak na part, yung pag-iisip na kung paano mo i-build up yung story ng thesis mo. But generally, ano ba yung nandun sa story? Dapat, you should be able to write in there what you found out in relation to your research questions. So yung results na nakuha mo na sumasagot or related, pwede kasi hindi sumasagot, especially if hindi success story, di ba? Pero related siya dun sa research questions mo. And then, hindi ko mabasa. So relate your specific question. I think this is already part of the discussion, the way that you're going to discuss it. So relate your specific results to the previous research or theory. So let me slice this more a little bit. Kasi yung results and discussion talaga sa manuscript, ito yung heavy part ng pagsusulat ng thesis manuscript. So first off, yung results. So you should be able to quarantine your observations, your results from your interpretations. Dapat clear. So crystal clear kung ano yung na-observe mo at kung ano yung interpretation mo or conclusion mo based on your observations. So, yung results, these are your logical response to the research questions that you have, and usually this is presented sequentially. Okay? or depending on the story that you want to achieve. Tapos, usually kasi, di ba, yung mga results natin, yung mga data natin, we present this. So the best way to present that is through a table, through a figure, or through a scheme. Kasi kapag table, figure, schemes, medyo mas nadadirect yung mata ng reader. Tapos, pag may mga visuals kasi talaga, mas madali siyang naiintindihan. Pero, ito kasi yung nakakalimutan ng mga students minsan. Dapat kapag present mo yung results mo in such a way na meron siyang figure, table, and scheme, you briefly comment on the significance. So what is the key results? So mention mo yung table, tapos, o yung figure, or yung scheme, tapos sabihin mo yung key result. You don't need really to mention everything na nandun sa table. Kasi mababasa, yung reader may luxury siya ng time para basahin yung nandun sa table or tignan mabuti yung nandun sa figure. Ang gagawin mo dun sa small paragraph or comment accompanying the result is bibigyan mo lang siya ng idea na ito pala yung key result na dapat mong i-focus. Okay? So, cite the key result and then give a brief comment about it. So, yun yung I think quite important. So, you don't need to really cite everything na nandun sa table or figure. So, yung key results lang ang sabihin mo with that. Okay. And then, usually, the way that the results are presented, pwede mo siyang i-present from the most important to the least important. Yung, syempre, yung sa pag-represent natin ng results. Or, minsan, may mga methods na ginagawa na you can group them together. Okay? And then, when you present the method, you present along with it the result. Okay? This is quite important. Halimbawa, kasi yung research namin, we deal with synthesis. So, sinasabi namin, halimbawa, kapag minix namin yung reagent A with reagent B, nakakuha kami ng red-colored solution, yun. So, minention namin yung method na ginawa namin and then yung corresponding result na nakuha namin. Okay, so, you can group the method or procedure and then cite kung ano yung relevant results that you gathered from them. And then usually, if you have statistics, okay, so describe the descriptive statistics first, and then you proceed with the results of each of the research question that you address. Okay, so this is for the results. For the discussion naman, so sa amin kasi, result and discussion, one section. Sa iba siguro, meron kang section for result and then meron kang section for discussion. But for PS Chem sa UPLB, ang ginagawa namin, results and discussion. Kaya very much important yung grouping ng results. Kasi pangit naman, ipe-present mo muna lahat ng results, tapos saka mo siya i-discuss. Nawawala na ba yung relationship ng results do sa discussion? So parang hahanapin pa nung magbabasa yung kung saan part ng manuscript mo or nung results mo yung nire-refer mo doon sa discussion. Usually, ang approach na ginagawa namin, so you have this collection of results na pwede mong pagsama-samahin and then you interpret that. So ito yung mga ways to proceed with your discussion. So give comments on your results. So usually sa mga comments, particularly if you have trend, so you mention the trend. Kung ano yung na-observe yung trend. No? Increasing, decreasing, mga ganon. You explain it. Okay, so you explain it and you interpret it. So yung explanation saka interpretation, usually this entails consulting relevant literature. So compare and contrast it with the relevant literature. And you can also find explanation from relevant literature of what had happened dun sa na-figure out nyo na results. So, kukunin nyo yung trend, so comment on it, interpret it, and then explain. Okay? So, ang usual na ginagawa dito, so kapag pinresent nyo yung result, i-discuss nyo siya right away. Pero dapat clear yung statements na ito yung results, ito yung observation, at ito yung interpretations nyo or discussion nyo about the results. And by the way, I want to emphasize in here, don't comment on something na hindi na-prove o hindi evident dun sa results nyo. Okay, so dapat yung discussion nyo will really center dun sa results. Okay, huwag kayong magbibigay ng, especially kasi doon sa interpretation na part. So, huwag kayong magbibigay ng interpretation na hindi naman siya masasubstantiate ng result. Okay? Bawa, yung A and B lang talaga yung result mo, pero kasi ikaw meron ka ng somewhat background knowledge. At saka, usually kasi ito yung ine-expect ko, so somewhat i-extend ko yung discussion ko na talagang isisingit ko yung gusto ko. Parang gano'n. Pero hindi siya, yes?
Yes, ate. Kumbaga, actually, I like the point that you're raising, no? Kasi ang thesis po at ang scientific report, yan po ay hindi chismis na pwede po ninyong palakahin ang istorya. So, di ba ate? Ito kasi, I really, ate, thank you so much for giving emphasis to that. Kasi feeling ko yan yung, since karamihan ng mga students natin, they're intimidated with the thesis process. And not just the thesis writing process. So, 'di ba meron sa ating unrealistic expectation na kailangan maganda yung isusulat mo. Pero, you know, you can still write things up, you know, in a fairly what do you call this? In a very effective way and in an engaging way without necessarily overclaiming things. So yun yung, this is actually, sa mga thesis students po dyan, whether you're doing your master's or undergraduate degree thesis, listen to what Professor Aguila is actually saying. So, dapat sapat yung, kumbaga yung yabang, dapat masusuportahan ng ebidensya. Ganoon po.
So, base nga doon sa mga memes, di ba? Parang yumabang ayot sa ganda. Yung mga ganong mga...
Yeah, ganon. Tama.
So we really need to build up naman yung ginawa natin, di ba? Kasi ginawa natin yan. It's your hard work. So, pero dapat ma-substantiate talaga natin yung mga claims natin. So, I also have in here na in your discussion, dapat you should be able to highlight the significance of your findings. Remember kasi di ba may ina-answer kang question. Tapos itong results mo, that's your take dun sa answer, dun sa problem na tinakal mo. So dapat ma-highlight mo yun. Give emphasis on that. And then, it's also quite important to point out the limitations of your study. Kasi meron talagang mga results na, yun nga, hindi ayon sa gusto mo mangyari. Kasi yun yung limitations ng methodology na ginawa mo. So yun yung limitations ng study mo. So hindi siya masama. Maganda nga na you're able to identify what it is. Okay? And then, also, along with that, note any questions that remain unanswered. Kasi that might really give you or yung reader ng additional field to focus on later. All right, so before I go into that sa introduction, the best way I think to do here sa results in discussion, i-gather nyo lahat ng mga results nyo. Tapos, somewhat make up an outline, how will you go about it? So, sa mga results na, tignan mo yung mga results mo, both successful and not successful. Kasi it will make your story better. Tapos, make an outline. Tapos, dito pala sa results and discussion section, kasi di ba usually ito yung bulk ng manuscript, you can present this with as many subsections as possible. So, yung mga subsections, guide mo din yon para mas ma-build up mo yung story, mas mapakita mo yung coherence ng one section to the other, at para din hindi gaanong malito yung magbabasa ng manuscript mo. So, kung magkakaroon ka ng mga subsections, subtopics, so within this results and discussion, the better. Kasi mas madali mong mapapakita yung gusto mong sabihin sa results and discussion. So, that's for the result and discussion. So, the introduction, I put in here, this is debate. So, debate siya kasi, di ba, so aside from the abstract, ito kasi talaga yung unang susunod na babasahin ng reader. Excuse me. So, you should be able to incite the interest of the reader. So, it should be sufficiently interesting to motivate the reader na tapusin yung manuscript reading. And then, more importantly, it should establish the importance of the problem that you want to solve. So, ano ba yung usually na nasa introduction? So, in a website where I found this na nagsasuggest siya ng how to write an introduction. So, nakita ko to and I think it's very nice. So, establish mo yung territory. So, ano ba yung topic mo? Tungkol saan yung topic mo? And establish the niche. So, bakit kailangan na gawin mo yung gusto mong gawin with respect to your topic? And then, establish mo yung current research. So, you make your hypothesis, you make your research question, and somewhat also you put in here yung ano nga ba yung term na? State of the art. Okay, yun yung term na usual na ginagamit. State of the art approaches with respect to sa problem na gusto mong itakla.
Yeah,
Okay?
kumbaga ate sa sa term ng mga kabataan ngayon, yung pinaka-bida-bida, yung pinaka-bibo.
Okay.
So yung standard, ganon. Yeah.
Doon sa problem na gusto mong itakla. And then with that, pwede mong i-line up. So ito yung approaches ko. How is it better with the state-of-the-art approaches? So may mga ganun kang sasabihin doon sa introduction. Ito kasi talaga yung bait para entice mo sila na basahin yung manuscript mo. So ito yung mga initial build-up na gagawin mo. So, ang pinaka-tips ko dito, keep it short. Okay? So yun lang yung nakalagay dito sa slide. Kasi this is usually my experience with my student. So gusto na nila ilagay lahat doon sa introduction. Nandun yung problem. Kasi di ba sabi ko, state of the art approaches. Nandun yung review of related literature. Pero parang gusto na nilang sabihin lahat ng related na literature doon sa introduction. And it's very long.
Yep.
So, kapag masyado siyang mahaba, mawawalan na rin ng ganang magbasa yung nagbabasa. So keep it short. Actually, my advice to them, if it's in a thesis manuscript, at most 2 pages. So better if it's about 1 or 1.5 page, pero siguro at most 2 pages. So dito mo din, siyempre, i-mention yung significance ng study mo, and then i-mention mo din yung big picture ba? Kung ano yung gusto mong ma-achieve. Kasi ito yung gagawin mo, although yung gagawin mo parang minute lang siya, pero how will it factor in sa big picture? So, kasama yun sa pagbibuild up ng research.
And ate, I would just like, I think I like the fact that you mentioned it here, no, na yung, kumbaga yung energy ng students when it comes to thesis writing, akala, di ba, typical ate, and tayo naranasan natin yung during our generation, na kapag mas maraming sinasabi, mas magaling. Well, in fact, not really. Kasi ngayon that, Professor Aguila has actually explained to everyone the real importance and purpose of an introduction, which is essentially to introduce yung conceptual framework of your research. Dapat, yun yung pinakamadaling mabasa atin, no? Kasi yun yung layout, yun yung design ng iyong study. So, students, keep all these things in mind. Kasi if you write up a very effective and a fairly concise introduction, it's gonna make the reading of the entire thesis much easier.
Okay, so that's actually a very nice sideway by by Jeff. So ito talaga kasi yung motivate sa reader na ipagpatuloy magbasa. So I think usually kasi ang nangyayari sa perspective ko lang, kaya napapahaba talaga kasi ito talaga yung I think una nilang sinusulat. Kasi tingin nila ito yung una dun sa listahan, so ito yung una kong isusulat. Kaya sa tingin ko, gusto na nilang sabihin doon lahat-lahat. Okay, so actually introduction is one of those things na medyo sa pahuli mo siya isusulat. Okay, kasi you want to establish talaga yung importance ng manuscript o yung research na ginawa. Okay, so next one is the summary and conclusion. So just like what I've said, so parang siguro minsan mas madali kung isulat mo na to right after you discuss the result and discussion. Or right after you write the results and discussion. Kasi comes side by side naman talaga. Ito yung strong finish mo sa iyong manuscript. So dito, I'd like to emphasize talaga to. You don't need to cite all the results na sinabi mo doon sa results in discussion. Kasi nga, di ba, sabi ko, pwede mong isama lahat. Pwede mong isama lahat doon. Pero dito sa summary and conclusion, highlight mo na lang yung most significant results mo, yung key results mo. And then, emphasize mo doon yung how your research aim had been achieved. Okay, di ba may mga objectives na? So, how your research aim had been achieved by the results that you have. Okay. Ang ayoko lang minsan sa mga pagsusulat ng mga student is sa summary and conclusion nila, sinasabi nila, objective 1 is achieved by ganyan, 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 ganyan. So, medyo off naman yon. Although, alam naman natin na kailangan mo nga i-address yung mga objectives. Pero, hindi naman medyo literal yung pagkakasulat na objective 1 has been achieved. So, reconstruct it in such a way na hindi ganun yung presentation. And dito, you need to really make a standout of what is your contribution to the field. So, di ba meron kang results and it addresses yung questions na you have before. And these are your contributions to the field. So, dapat ma-highlight mo. Okay? So, again, ang comment ko dito, usually, make it short, actually concise. So, maikli lang, pero nandun talaga yung mga key results na gusto nating makita. Okay, yung conclusion na ibibigay mo dito, this is very important, should be based on the points that you raise in the discussion. So dapat matatrack mo na yung conclusion na binibigay mo, supported siya ng result, and then na-discuss mo siya thoroughly. Hindi ka pwedeng mag-add in ng mga points na hindi mo naman, again, na-substantiate sa results and discussion. Okay, so hindi allowable yun. So dapat dito sa summary and conclusion, matatrack back nila kung ano man yung sinasabi mo doon sa results and discussion na meron ka. And then usually, since key results na lang nga at conclusions ang binibigay mo dito, key explanations, hindi mo na kailangang mag-cite ng references. Minsan kasi nagsasite pa ng references. You do that already in the results and discussion. And then, very much do not include unnecessary information. So do not include yung mga interpretations nyo na hindi naman relevant dun sa topic, dun sa context ng topic. Okay. And then we go to the recommendations. So dun sa format ng sa BS Chem, sa UPLB, we have the separate section for recommendation. Although sometimes part siya ng summary and conclusion. So, pero in general, ang nasa recommendation ay present. So dapat iniisip natin, further improve, where to go or not to go from dun sa meron kayo. So yun yung ngayon magiging starting point yung nandun sa manuscript mo. Tapos ano yung mga recommendations mo, how to go from there, where to go from there, or where not to go. Okay. So this includes remedial action to solve the problem, especially kapag yung mga problems na hindi mo talaga na-tackle or na-solve thoroughly. So you can specify and recommend another way of how to approach that. Unfortunately, hindi mo siya na magagawa, hindi na siya scope ng research mo, pero pwede mo siyang sabihin sa recommendation. And then you can also suggest some research to fill in the gaps in the understanding dun sa topic, or directions for future investigations on related topic. So I think really these two will, ito yung talagang mag-widen ng scope natin sa science. If we're able to identify how to fill in the gaps in understanding and yung mga future directions sa related topics. Okay. Ang pinaka-last na ginagawa ay yung abstract, di ba? Ito nga yung sinasabi ko. As yung abstract, this is the first impression. So dapat medyo may dating din talaga to. So yung abstract, it is a standalone text. Kapag binasa nila yung abstract, they already will get an idea of what the problem that you want to solve, what are the methodologies that you use to solve the problem. So how did you do it? Okay. And what are your key results and conclusions about it? So it's very short, about 200 to 300 words only. So nakalagay dito, it is a snapshot of your whole thesis. Okay. So yung maybe 50 pages na thesis mo, from results and discussion to summary and conclusion, you should be able to paliitin pa yan into just a one paragraph. So 200 to 300 words. So ganun lang siya dapat. So yung bigat ng abstract, medyo mabigat talaga siya. Kaya these are the things that usually pwede mong sagutin habang sinusulat mo yung abstract. Meron na rin recommendation si Jeffrey at saka, I think si Jeffrey doon sa previous webinar about this, kung ano yung meron sa abstract. I like this because these are questions that you can answer while you're writing the abstract. So what did the researcher do in the research? So mention it in one line or two. So what were the reasons for doing the research? So ito na yung somewhat background mo, bakit gusto mong gawin. How did the research go about finding out the answers? So in relation to the first question, so medyo bibigay mo yung mga key methodology na ginamit mo. And then what did you find out? So ano yung mga key results mo? Of course, answering yung questions na ina-address mo. Okay, and why are these key results important? So a brief explanation of your key results. So these are the questions that you should be able to answer and incorporate in the abstract. May sasabihin ba si Jeff? Parang may nag-feedback kanina.
Ay, wala pa ate.
Okay.
Yes, all good.
Okay, so this is for the abstract. And then yung mga further comments ko na lang sa iba pang mga sections. So yung literature cited, so depende yan sa formatting ng department nyo. So it can be APA style. So usually I think it's APA style. But what I wanted to highlight in here is you can use actually reference managers. Yung reference manager, so it can be an online software or a downloadable software that you can install in your computer. Tapos, minamanage na niya sa manager niya, yung mga references mo. So sa managing, so pwede mo, nandun na ilalagay na niya doon yung information na mahalaga para sa pagsasite. And sometimes pwede mo na rin siyang i-attach yung copy ng mismong say journal article. Pwede mong i-attach doon sa entry para sa that said literature. Tapos the beauty of this is you can use it. So, meron silang function na cite as you write. So, i-open mo lang tong mga to, tapos habang nagta-type ka ng discussion mo, tapos ito yung literature na ginamit mo, ika-copy mo lang from your reference manager, paste doon sa iyong document, and then later on, may konting function ka lang na gagawin, it will already give you the list of the references. So, tanda ko dati nung undergrad ako, ang ginawa ko, tinype in ko siya isa-isa. So, pero okay lang kasi I think it's about just 50. Pero imagine mo kung more than 50. At saka, it will also take some time kung itatype mo sila isa-isa. Tapos medyo iisipin mo pa rin kasi kung ano yung formatting na gagawin mo. Pero meron na tayong mga software that can help you out. Input mo lang doon kung ano yung format, APA style or ACS style. So, pwede na niyang ibigay. Tapos, at the end of writing, pwede ka lang, may konting buttons ka lang na ipe-press and then it will give you the list of the literature. And then, ito yung mga usually na ginagamit. Ito yung mga usually na ginagamit, yung EndNote, Mendeley, and Zotero. Ito yung mga screenshot ng ginugel ko kanina. So this one, I think is yung top. This is the Zotero. This is the Mendeley. And then yung nasa middle, that's your Zotero. And you have a note. Ang alam ko, yung Mendeley and Zotero, these are freeware. So nakalagay dyan, no, free. Okay. Pero unfortunately, I can't help you out kasi hindi ko siya pa nagagamit. Ang mas nagagamit ko yung EndNote. Alam ko, yung online version ng EndNote, free din siya. Kaya nga lang online siya, so dapat may internet access ka to be able to access that reference manager. Tapos, yung tips ko sa pagsusulat ng RRL, that's Review of Related Lit. So, I think Ms. Janice gave you a very nice webinar about this. So, sa thesis outline nyo kasi, di ba, sa proposal stage, actually, dun talaga nagkakaroon ng bulk evaluation ng previous research. Ang gagawin nyo lang dito sa thesis manuscript nyo, medyo iti-trim down nyo, i-check nyo talaga, it's still relevant to the topic that I have. Now that you have your results and discussion, i-check nyo kung relevant pa ba. Kasi di ba, relevant literature. Yung term relevant doon eh. So, medyo sabihin nyo subjective, pero dapat medyo in the context talaga ng topic na meron kayo. So, i-trim down nyo na lang siguro or dagdagan nyo depending on dun sa results and discussions na meron kayo. Ano ba yung relevant na? And then yung materials and method, ito yung isa sa mga pinakamadali na masusulat natin. Kasi sa outline meron na to, tapos ito talaga yung ginawa mo. So, ito yung what, when, where, how, why you did what you did. So, ang gagawin nyo lang dito, so di ba sa outline, future tense pa kasi siya. So, dito ay yung past participle tense, which is mentioned by JP, I think, in his webinar. So, yun yung way how to write the materials and method. Okay. So, yun yung sa manuscript. Now, ito na yung some tips ko sa thesis defense. So, sa presentation. Yung thesis defense kasi dito, usually an oral presentation. Very brief lang to, one slide lang. Kasi meron pa naman tayong succeeding webinar about this giving oral presentation. So, ang usual na sinasabi ko sa mga students ko, okay, presentation, PowerPoint presentation, manuscript. Ang usual kasi nilang ginagawa, kung paano nila yung sequence doon sa manuscript, ganun din yung sequence doon sa presentation. Okay? Dapat hindi ganun. For me, the best way to do about that is present the background. Okay? Ano ba yung problem? Tapos, ano ba yung currently being done with the problem? That's why I said present the review of related literature first. Di ba sa manuscript, anong nangyayari? Introduction, yung background, tapos objectives muna, tapos saka yung RFL. Dito hindi. I believe for me, the best way to go about this is you have your background information, what is the problem, why do you want to address it, what is currently being done to address it. Tapos saka mo ibibigay yung objective mo. Kasi ito yung gusto kong gawin. And I think this is a better way to do that. Okay? Tapos yung methods, diba, doon sa sequencing, materials and method, isang section, tapos results and discussion, isang section. For me, I think the best way to present this is, meron kang certain method. After presenting yung certain method na yon, present mo na yung results mo right away and then yung discussion mo, interpretation mo right away. Para kasi medyo connected yung interpretation ng makikinig. So, ang lagi ko sinasabi sa mga students ko dito, iba kasi yung attention span ng nagbabasa sa nakikinig. Okay? Medyo mas maliit yung attention span ng nakikinig o yung tumitingin, yung kapag PowerPoint or kapag presentation ng gagawin mo. Iba kasi yon. So, medyo mas maikli yung attention span kapag nakikinig or kapag wina-watch. Tapos kapag binabasa. And at the same time, kasi kapag yung binabasa, they have the luxury of time to go back para mas maintindihan nila. Kapag sa presentation kasi, especially if this is a technical presentation, ang gagawin mo, ibibigay mo muna lahat. Tapos saka mo pa lang sila i-entertain yung question. Saka pa lang nila mababalikan. So parang nalito na sila ng tuluyan. So kaya ang usual kong pinapagawa or may recommendation, so ito yung ginawa mo, present mo na kaagad kung ano yung result, tapos ano yung interpretation mo and explanation mo doon sa results mo. Tapos, ganun din. So, by sections or by a certain group of topics. And then, summary and conclusion, highlight mo lang, recommendation, and then yung acknowledgement. So, ito yung usual na meron sa oral presentation. And then, isa pa, na gusto kong sabihin, di ba sa manuscript kasi talaga, more of text siya. Yung mga tables natin and figures, in contrast to the text, medyo mas konti siya. Pag tinranslate mo siya sa thesis defense oral presentation, hindi mo siya ika-copy and paste, hindi paragraph style. Kasi mahirap basahin yun. So, bulleted na lang. Actually, the more figures that you can have, tapos yung mga text na ilalagay mo ay yung important text na lang. And most of the things that you need to say, actually, sabihin mo na lang. So, ganun yung tips ko with the thesis defense. And then, be confident during the presentation. Ang lagi ko sinasabi, ikaw ang gumawa niyan, mas alam mo yan kaysa sa kanila. Pwedeng mas alam ko kasi ako yung advisor, pero siyempre hindi naman kita gigisahin na mabuti. Tutulungan kita. Pero yung other members, yung other faculty, lagi ko sinasabi doon sa mga students ko, mas alam mo yung ginawa mo kaysa sa kanila. So, ang gagawin mo, make sure mo lang na masasabi mo sa kanila, marirelay mo sa kanila na ito yung ginawa mo, ito yung alam mo with respect dun sa ginawa mo. And then, cliche, it might seem like, pero indeed, you need to practice. So, for my research group, I encourage them to practice in the group. So, you can practice with your peer, so yung mga classmates mo, with your friends, as long as yung group of people na papagpa-practicean mo nung presentation mo, ang pinaka-importante is you respect the opinions that they will give. Kasi, syempre, pag nag-practice ka, you will ask opinions about how you give the presentation, yung content, it is clear, is it readable, yung mga ganon. So, magbibigay sila ng suggestions sa'yo, dapat you respect that. So, meron kayong mutual respect para confident yung people na magbibigay ng suggestions na kapag sinuggest nila to sa'yo, it will indeed for your improvement. Okay? Yung last slides na is some tips about being a thesis student. Okay. So I have it here, choosing your advisor. So pag sa choosing your advisor, sa IC kasi they interview yung prospective advisor. So you can also do that. Interview nyo yung advisor nyo. Ask the faculty to give maybe 1 to 2 topics na pwede mong i-work on. Okay. And then there are also some other things na you need to ask, especially since if you're doing lab work here, like yung funding, kung may funding yung research, kasi you would not want to shoulder naman yung expenses. Okay, so dapat ma-clear mo yon with your prospective advisor. And then also, you need to be able to clear it out with your prospective advisor at the start, even dun sa pag-choose pa lang ng advisor sa kanang topic. Ano yung coverage? So ano yung expected of you? Tapos yung choosing the topic, general recommendation ko dito, choose the topic that you are really interested on. I'm proud to say na doon sa mga research yung thesis ko, I really choose the advisor and the topic na I'm interested on. Hindi siya basta requirement lang. I can use to develop my character. Kapag it is a requirement, so parang pabigat siya. Pero if it is something that will help you develop your character, so may positive outlook ka doon sa thesis. So something that you are really interested on, or in your understanding, something that is interesting or useful. And then plan ahead. So sa planning, so di ba meron kang mga thesis stages. It is important to plan ahead in all those stages. So sa thesis outline, sa experimentation, and sa thesis manuscript. And then, I think Jeffrey mentioned this, one way to really improve or to help you more, di ba dun sa writing ng journal, is to read journals. Para alam mo kung paano siya usually pino-format, yung tone ng discussion dun sa journal. Ganun din sa manuscript writing. Read previous thesis para magkaroon ka ng idea kung paano ba sinusulat yung thesis, ano ba yung mga nandun. And then lastly, ito yung usual na hinahanap ko sa mga students ko. Kasi usually, di ba, especially sa undergrad level, ako yung nagbibigay ng topic. Pero, tinitignan ko how the students own or claim ownership of their work. So, paano nila winort out yung topic. So, paano nila pinayabong yung topic. So, paano nila ginawa yung kanilang mga experiment. So, yung mga ganong aspect. So, may sense of independence and ownership doon sa inyong thesis. Yung next slide naman is for the advisors and future advisors. Okay. The first I have in here is be a mentor. So, I Googled it up. So may difference yung advisor sa mentor. Yung advisor kasi parang more directed lang towards the technical side, technical knowledge. Okay? So whereas kapag mentor ka, so you're advising as well, pero you're also sharing your experiences. So parang hindi naman burden yung paggawa, yung thesis process for your student. And alam ko itong part na to, yung second, although mahirap talaga siyang gawin, especially for the students na for some reason talagang may nagtatago talaga ng mga students sa mga advisors nila. So establish a constant communication with your student. Siguro, so based on my experience on this, siguro kapag magko-communicate ka with your students, hindi lang tungkol sa thesis. Ask din siguro natin, for example, tungkol sa studies nila, how they are coping, or especially at this point, diba, during that pandemic, in general, how are they coping during these times? Okay, so this is my research group. So this is part na ng acknowledgement kasi yung experience ko naman dito, 2 beses lang ako nagsulat ng thesis. No undergrad ko, which is way back in 2003. Tapos yung PhD dissertation ko, which is 2014. But most of the things that I mentioned to you, actually, I gathered from my experience handling a thesis student. So this is my current research group. So sa research group namin, to establish yung communication at saka para medyo mapadali din yung thesis process nila, we have a one-on-one weekly consultation, especially nung mga nakaraang mga semesters na face-to-face pa yung mode of teaching. Pero ngayon medyo hindi na kasi medyo mahirap na siyang isettle. And then we also have a weekly group meeting. So the purpose of this is to, aside from the student, so meron kasing usually student na nag-give ng oral presentation, nag-gain sila ng confidence, na-introduce din ng student yung topic dun sa mga other students na hindi yun yung ginagawa na research. So mas nagkakaroon siya ng idea how to sell it out to the other students na hindi yun yung ginagawa na research. Okay? And that's the end of my presentation for today. So thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you, Ma'am Daang. So to facilitate the question and answer, I will call on Kuya Jeff first for his questions. Kuya Jeff.
Okay. Okay, so ito po, bale ate, before Marty throws the questions at you, yung online questions, I actually, I was listening to your talk, and first and foremost, thank you so much for a very well thought of discussion. Kasi, it brought me back to, all those, the couple of points in my life where I actually wrote a thesis. So essentially yung undergrad rin, and also yung PhD. And so I think, when we thought about this webinar, ikaw yung nasa isip talaga namin kasi ikaw yung most experienced, having mentored students who have graduated from UPLB. Kasi tayo lahat nga, taga-Galawa lang tayo. So doing it twice does not make us experts now. Pero siguro ate, I like the fact that you went over the thesis writing process, no? So it's not the thesis process, not just the writing stage itself. So yung question ko ate, siguro I would just like for you to siguro look back dun sa experiences mo dun sa mga napag-graduate mo na mga students and even yung current ones ngayon. So transitioning from the research, from the thesis ideation stage, I don't know if kung nagsusulat sila ng thesis proposal, and then transitioning over to the thesis conduct itself, yung experimentation, and then to the right, all the way down to the yung writing. Ano ba yung mga common, I think you mentioned some of these things already, ano ba ate yung mga most common pitfalls na that students actually stumble upon na pag na nakita mo, ito typically kapag na-experience nila to during the thesis process, hirap silang makarecover, hirap silang makakope. Kasi ate, I think sharing some of these observations and experiences will actually be very relevant, as guidance to thesis students and also to thesis advisors themselves.
Okay, so I think isa talaga sa amin problem nila ay yung minsan yung scope ng study, which is I think medyo fault ko din. Kasi at times pag medyo na-excite ako sa mga results nila. So para I have a lot of ideas that I want them to work on na na-overwhelm sila. So siguro at the start pa lang, so especially yung mga una kong mga students, so shout out to sa mga una kong mga students, medyo malawak talaga yung topic nila. Pero I've learned through several students na okay, undergrad nga pala itong mga to. So dapat siguro ganito yung meron na medyo narrow down na yung mga topics.
Yep.
And dapat at the start medyo clear na on both parties. Nakalimutan ko sabihin na ito nga palang thesis process is a contract between the student and the mentor, the advisor. Contract talaga siya. Actually, madami pa akong cheche boreche in my research group. Talagang meron kaming document na sinusulat namin doon. Ano ba yung ini-expect mo? May mga series of questions na ano yung ini-expect mo na gagawin ng advisor mo? Ano yung kailangan ma-expect from you? Okay, yung mga ganon. Kasi ang thinking ko kasi talaga is for the teachers, dapat ang thinking natin ay gabayan yung mga students natin kasi towards a better future. Kahit isang requirement lang to, pero di ba character development talaga kasi ang thesis. So towards a better future.
Yep. And essentially, Ate, you know, like I have experience. Yeah, no. That's actually very important though. Kasi, di ba, Ate, I like the fact that you mentioned the importance of mentorship. First and foremost, mentorship. So you know, it's the thesis process should not just be a transactional experience for the students na para pumasa ka, kailangan mong ma-deliver tong results na to. Kasi you know, like at least the thesis process is beyond that. Kasi you know, we all ideate topics for research without necessarily being sure of the outcome. Di ba? Ate, sabi mo nga, minsan, yung nakukuhang results ay kabaliktad ng ini-expect. So, and then the students themselves only have a limited, you know, time to perform the activity. So, you know, like as the scope changes and as surprising results come about, kailangan talaga din yung dynamic, yung constant communication. So there really has to always, kailangan laging nagtatransact or kailangan meron laging compromise na nangyayari between the students and yung advisor, Ate. No? Which actually brings me to my next question. No? So Ate, on the perspective naman of a thesis advisor, at one point, would you actually consider, you know, like a body of work of a student to be enough for them to graduate, you know, for them to pass yung thesis? Kasi di ba nga, Ate, minsan yung ine-expect mo nangyayari, minsan only 75% of your expected outcomes are actually realized. So on the perspective of an advisor, how do you gauge that? Para alam din ng mga students natin, para nakikita nila what goes inside a thesis advisor's brain.
Okay. Actually, Jeff, before I answer that,
yes,
dagdag ko lang sa previous natin discussion. Di ba may constant communication yung student saka yung advisor. At the same time, kaya din for me napakahalaga ng weekly discussion. The students are able to communicate with fellow students kasi minsan iba din talaga yung perspective ng mga students. So may mga pananaw sila na oo nga no, especially kapag mas simple yung pananaw nila sa pananaw ko. So mapapaganoon na lang ako. Kasi minsan medyo complicated na yung nasa utak ko. Tapos they are able to explain it in a simple way. Ang main drawback kasi talaga sa mga students is yun nga, kapag hindi gumagana yung mga experiments nila, doon sila nadadown. So, dahil yung nasabi mo, paano pag hindi na-achieve talaga yung 100%? Ang tinitingnan ko talaga is yung ownership. At paano ko ba siya tinitingnan? So hindi nga na gumana yung experiment mo. Okay. Pero, kapag pumunta ka sa akin and then when we talk about it, okay, hindi po gumana yung experiment ko. Okay, so, ano sa tingin mo nangyari? You have an answer for that. Kapag you have an answer for that, ibig sabihin, nag-research to. So, alam niya yung ginawa niya. So, meron na siyang ownership ng work niya. Tapos, and then, pwede din on your own or through me guiding you, yung parang nagkaroon tayo ng additional approach or another approach to the topic. Pero that's based on yung palitan ng exchange of ideas. So, yung mga ganong aspect. So, actually, unfortunately, yung mga results talaga ng mga thesis students ko, hindi siya in accordance doon sa kung ano yung gusto kong mangyari. Pero, I was able to make them graduate. So, award sa kanila, hindi accept their thesis kasi they're able to figure out what went wrong, explain it, suggest, and do the suggestions, and so on their own. Or with very minimal input from me.
Okay.
So,
siguro Ate yung... siguro ate yung mga natutunan ko dun sa mga sinabi mo, no. I'm just trying to synthesize out of those answers because ang ganda ng mga sagot. First and foremost is that like keeping an open line of communication, essentially an open discourse with between a student and the advisor is actually very important kasi 'di ba sabi mo nga ate, you also learn from your students kasi minsan most of us we're actually used to adapting a fairly complex view of a problem. Siguro kasi ang lalim, medyo mas malalim yung pagkakaintindi natin. But then again, at the same time, sometimes less is more. Minsan yung basic na approach, yung mas common sense approach, it actually works. And sometimes it comes from the student. So siguro ito ate yung I would like to encourage all of our thesis advisors who are actually dialing in or who are participating in this session na I can actually confidently say that yung thesis mentorship that that Professor May Joanne Aguila is setting, is setting as an example, is a fairly progressive one. Ibang-iba po yung approach niya. Kasi nung panahon namin, which hindi naman kami ganun sobrang katanda, pero nung mga panahon po namin, wala kaming gantong guidance. Tapos, yung mga advisors po namin, this is not an ageist remark, no, pero nasa ibang generation sila. So technically, pag lumapit ka sa kanila, more likely tatarayan ka. And then that actually closes up like the lines of communication. So that which is quite unfortunate. So ito po kasi makikita nyo ngayon sa medyo mga mas bata sigurong advisors that they're actually more open, to having a discussion with the students. So yung pong katarayan natin, kung tayo po yung advisors, tanggalin nyo na po yan kasi it's not only a disservice to the students, you're also disenfranchising yourselves of the opportunity to learn from your students. So yun lang po yung mabibigay namin guidance. And then siguro ate yun nga, I really like the point that, okay, sabi mo dun lagi sila na babag down sa yung pag hindi gumagana, paano sila makarecover from that. Pero ate, if we flip the coin naman, no, paano kung meron kang student na ang dami-daming magagandang results? So when is it that the right time to stop and to just like make those recommendations naman na, okay, itong part na to, yun ate.
Okay, so usually kasi di pa nangyayari, which is, I hope it is, meron ka yung objectives mo. Ang ginagawa, chinichikan. So, nagawa mo na ba ito? Nagawa mo na ba ito? Nagawa mo na ito?
Yeah.
So, well, actually, ang ginagawa ko, sometimes we tweak the objectives. Kasi di ba minsan di talaga siya nagawa. Pero doon sa mga okay na yung mga results, actually parang na-tick off na niya lahat ng mga objectives. Walang question doon. Okay na yun. Okay na yun. Tapos ang ino-offer ko na lang sa kanila after, for example, they would want to apply as an instructor sa IC, and then i-offer ko na lang would you like to continue your research? So parang side hustle ba while you're doing your instructor work, para lang, especially kapag yun nga, yung mga success stories, tapos meron siyang mataas yung prospect niya para ma-publish. Kaya lang, yung current scope niya parang hindi pa siya enough to really make up a paper. So I think I made an offer na pwede mong i-continue kapag kahit na instructor ka na, faculty ka na, para lang medyo kompleto yung yung story natin na pwede natin ma-publish.
Ayun.
So to answer to that question, kapag talagang okay yung mga results, really we will just tick off yung objectives.
Okay. So ito kinover po natin yung mga students na nahirapan at yung mga students na manabida-bida, di ba ate? Kumbaga, para yung state of the art, no? Para dun sa project na yun. So ate, thank you so much for answering those questions kasi, I think, the good thing about you is that you were a thesis student a couple of times, but then now you're a thesis advisor. So, you have a realistic sense of what it's like to be on both ends of the spectrum, no? So thank you so much, ate. And then we can go back to the online questions siguro. Marty.
All right. Thank you, Kuya Jeff and Ma'am Daang for that mini discussion. I'll proceed now with the online questions from Zoom and YouTube. So unahin na po natin yung nasa YouTube. Sabi dito, Ma'am Aguila, paano daw kapag marami silang results which will be prioritized dun sa na-discuss dun sa results and discussion. From among the many results that they generated, ano daw yung kailangang i-prioritize and discussing?
So, yung prioritization mo doon, ang titignan mo, yung objectives mo. So, alin ba doon yung direct na na-answer niya yung objectives mo? Tapos, di ba, pwede naman kasi kayong mag-group ng mga results. I think kapag nag-group kayo ng results into a certain section, yung discussion nyo doon, mas maikli, pero mas concise siya. Mas malaman, kahit mas maliit, mas malaman. So, parang ganun. So, check nyo yung objectives nyo, yung questions nyo, yung mga research questions nyo, yun yung unang-unang yung dapat i-answer. Di ba? Yun yung most important. Tapos, go about doon sa least important.
All right. So sabi ni Ma'am Daang is kailangan aligned pa rin dun sa bounds ng research nyo, yung una nyong gagawin na i-discuss. So even though maka-generate ka ng many data from your thesis, dapat yun talagang objectives mo yung masasagot. So ito pa Ma'am Daang, Ma'am, please share tips to students kung paano gumawa ng smart and proactive planning para sa realization of research. So, paano po daw kayo nagpa-plan with your research group para ma-achieve yung goals po ng
sa research group ko, ang ginagawa ko kasi, especially when nung face-to-face pa, very active ako noon. Pero ngayon kasi medyo hindi na kasi nga online naman. When they do yung one-on-one meeting, meron silang document na isasubmit sa akin. Na yun yung pag-uusapan namin sa one-on-one meeting namin. Ano yung meron doon sa document? A summary of what they did for the past week and what they want to do for this week or the coming weeks. So yun yung planning. Tapos at the start, kapag alam kong nag-register sila ng basta nag-thesis, okay, sa start pa lang yon during registration, mini-meeting ko na sila tapos pinapagawa ko sila ng semestral planning. So parang ano lang siya, by month lang, ano yung gusto mong gawin with respect dito sa mga gusto mong i-achieve. So yon. So tapos nakabangga kami doon sa mga weekly meetings namin. Na doon sa weekly meetings meron silang document na ibibigay sa akin na nandun yung kung ano yung ginawa nila in the previous week tapos ano yung gusto nilang gawin for this week or the succeeding week. So, yun yung for the planning na ginagawa namin. Pero dapat may leeway pa rin for pumalpak yung experiment, yung mga ganon. So, i-include mo din doon sa document na isasubmit. So, medyo organized ako, especially nung first part, nung face-to-face pa talaga yung laboratory.
Grabe ate, kung estudyante pa rin ako ngayon, sa'yo ako magtitesis. No, because to be honest, you know, if at the undergraduate level, they experience the thesis process at such a level of organization. When those students go to higher education and work on their dissertations, you know, the process will be much less daunting. You know, I think the students, you know, anyone interested in pursuing research or, you know, going through the thesis process, it's the undergrad level that's yung baptism, dyan sila nabibinyagan. So kapag medyo traumatic yung experience dyan, imagine nyo kung gaano karami mga estudyante that could have some future in research ang posibleng ma-discourage because natakot or nasindak sa thesis process. So ate, thank you so much for what you do. Yeah. Actually,
yung document na yun, a former MS student gave me a feedback about it, that it really helps them a lot. Yung, di ba yung sa start, yung sa research and discussion, gather mo lahat ng results mo, nag-gather mo na during the weekly meeting. So, interpret mo na lang, ano ba dito yung pwede kong pagsama-samahin? Which becomes more important, especially as you progress do sa degree. Sa BS kasi medyo maliit lang yung scope ng research mo, pero pag nag-MS ka na, especially pag nag-PhD ka na, ang lawak na ng scope ng research mo. So medyo mas kailangan ng ganung organization.
And meron na rin talaga, and I think what I like about, you know, the way you're approaching your research is that ate, you know, during the monthly update, you cover the results and then may group processing na, no? Yeah, so it's already captured right there. So ang quite intimidating po kasi sa thesis process, for example, yung lumang approach namin is that tatapusin namin lahat yung work and then at the end of it, ipipresent namin yung result. So minsan, masusurpresa ka na lang, hindi pala gusto ng advisor mo yung result na yun.
Oo. Yun kasi yung
Ay,
mahirap
nandun yung sa
minsan,
Yeah.
nung mo pala malalaman, ay, hindi pala yun yung gusto ko.
Oo, hindi. And also at the same time, you know, to be honest, sometimes if expectations are not clearly communicated, it's very difficult to manage them. Kasi minsan yung mga advisors natin, sobrang busy, nakakalimutan din nila yung sinasabi nila. And then, you know, at the end of the day, oh yeah, that's true. And then at the end of the day, you know, it's them who decide, it's them who would actually decide, ay, sapat na ba to? Eh, paano kung nakalimutan mo yung sinabi mo sa student mo noong una? And then you
yun
believe,
nga sabi ko sa mga students ko na yung document na yan ang gagamitin yung panlaban sa akin pag pinagawa ko.
That's true. No. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have experienced it myself. You know, ang daming beses kaming napagalitan kasi you know, the advisor thought she told us to do something a particular way. Well, in fact, hindi naman. Pero at the end of the day, ang estudyante are the ones who have to make the ultimate adjustment. So, you know, I really, so yung pong project and research management on the perspective of our thesis advisors, you hold that responsibility, and you know, yung thesis advisors should be accountable for that. Kasi yun po, maiksi lang ang oras ng mga estudyante during the undergrad thesis, diba ate? 2 semesters at most. You know, so you know, I'm hoping that you know, hindi lang po mga estudyante ang natututo dito, but also the thesis advisors or yung students ngayon who will eventually become thesis advisors. You know, we also have that such responsibility na kailangan orderly rin and may management tools ka para maging enjoyable naman and productive talaga yung thesis process sa mga estudyante natin. Ayun.
Alright, so ito po may question si Marlo Fabia from Zoom. As Ma'am Daang, in a research study dynamics, there is a possibility of new discovery or findings born outside of the original concept note. How should it be built in the thesis writing effectively? Or isusulat ba talaga yun sa thesis kung wala siya sa objective?
Okay, so yan actually yung mga types ng research na exciting for me. Yung mga serendipity yung pagkakakuha natin ng mga results. For me, isulat mo pa rin siya sa thesis. So, ang pwede mong way how you will approach that. So, sasabihin mo, ito yung objectives mo, ito yung ginawa mo, but then, i-mention mo na ito yung nakuha mo. Na pwede pala siyang new findings siya or different findings. So, parang in a sense, hindi siya yung gusto mong results na lumabas, pero interesting pa rin siya. So, ganon. I-relate mo pa rin siya doon sa objectives na gusto mong sabihin. Yung sinasagot niya, hindi niya sinasagot pala. Yung hope, yung sana sinagot niya, i-relate mo pa rin siya doon kasi yun yung magiging starting point mo. Tapos medyo saka mo i-build up na ito yung nakuha mo doon sa result and ito yung interpretation mo. And then you can go from there. So medyo ano ba siya, malino ba yun, Marty?
Yeah.
Yes, ate. Yes po, yes. So yun nga, parang isusulat pa rin siya sa baka pwede siya sa conclusion kasi sa conclusion na pupunta sa conclusion and recommendation na pupunta yung further study.
Kasi talaga isulat mo talaga lahat ng nakuha mo, ng lahat ng ginawa mo. Yun nga yung parang ang pwede mo kasing approach doon, ito yung objective mo na gusto mong sagutin, di ba? Tapos back up mo ng literature in your mind na ito yung dapat mong makuha. Pero nung ginawa mo na yung experiment, ito yung nakuha mo. And then build upon that one. Okay, so hindi nga talaga directly nasagot yung objective mo, pero it widen niya yung scope ng topic mo. Tapos pwede mo na rin siyang i-build up later sa recommendation if it's really an interesting one.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Daang. So, may gusto po ata mag-question, mag-ask ng question live. Si Kyla, tama ba yun, Kuya JP? Kyla ba yung name?
Yes, yes.
Kyla, can you please ask your question?
Unmute and you can turn on your video. Is she on now?
Wala. Natakot yata.
Hello, Miss Kyla.
Hello po. Hello.
Yan, good morning.
Good morning. Wait lang na ano ko kay akala ko isabi lang po. Pero good morning po. I know na kanang pang college naman po to. But concerning the topic lang po about our research mentor, since we sa amin pong school, hindi po pinipili yung aming research mentor. Rather, gina-assign sa amin. So, I have a question regarding about this because I am the research leader kasi of our group, and considering na I should be the direct contact to our research advisor or mentor. So, now kasi I have a problem communicating with our research advisor since he is not communicating or conducting meetings to us, and it has been a problem to the point that we are unsure of what we are going to do even though we are constantly reaching out to him. So I want to seek your advice on what to do in this matter, because as today we are communicating to our proposal defense panel, because we currently have we previously conducted our proposal defense. So I would like to seek your advice since naging problema na siya ngayon at this point, and kung ano bang pwedeng magagawa dito. Yun lang po.
Okay. So I'm really sorry about your experience. So medyo daunting yung experience mo, especially at these times. Ang main advice ko sa iyo, medyo tricky to. Siguro proceed ka dun sa mas mataas dun sa professor mo. So ano ba 'yon? Yung department chair? So or ano ba to? Usually may mga undergraduate committee chair, yung mga ganon, or department chair. I-seek mo yung help nila on how to communicate with the professor. And then pwede niyo na ring sabihin na kapag wala talaga communication, ask na kayo formally to change yung mentor. Okay. Kasi medyo mahirap nga yung part na yan. Well, hindi ko rin kasi masasabi ko anong pinagdadaanan ng mentor. Pero sa akin siguro ang gagawin ko, kung ako ikaw, since basta na-exhaust mo na lahat ng ways how to possibly communicate with the professor, yung next na sa kanya, yung department chair. Ilapit nyo na yung problema nyo doon sa department chair. And hopefully, the department chair has ways to communicate with the professor. And then kung talagang wala, ask for a change in the mentorship.
Yeah.
And I think it's also maganda rin po siguro na i-assess nila where they sit at this point, kasi nabanggit yata niya na they are working in a group. So parang siguro mag-meeting sila among themselves kung nasa na yung research nila at this point, para kung ilapit nila dun sa higher personnel, ano na, parang planchado na yung ipe-present nila na ito na po yung nagawa namin, what should we do? So ayun, wala talaga tayong magagawa kung ganyang administrative yung problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I think like one thing that I would also suggest that you do is that if by some sort of design sa inyong curriculum ay bound kayo with that mentor, you can also seek informal mentors naman, just so you don't necessarily have to wait for that person. So it's very important that you just keep like talking to experts in the field or anyone who's at a capacity to lead you.
Yeah, probably. Just to keep the we miss you at some point, Kuya Jeff.
Finalist
Yeah.
doon, may mentor namin.
Yeah.
Ayun,
Kuya
pero
Jeff, can
yeah.
you repeat what you just said? Kasi medyo naputol ka at some point.
Okay, so at which point did I get did you lose me? From the beginning,
mostly everything.
Okay, so yeah, so sabi ko, it's quite unfortunate that this you experience this, but kung administratively ganito talaga na design yung inyong research program, I would highly encourage you to seek out informal mentorship. Kasi if at the moment, kasi you're losing time, and time is actually one of your most important resource for conducting your research, no? So try just keep engaging with people who's at the capacity or who have the expertise to actually lead you on how to approach or how to execute your research. Gano'n na lang yung pwede nyong gawin, kasi yun nga, if through formal lines of communications hindi niyo talaga makuha yung feedback from your mentor, just keep trying. And if I may ask, ano ba yung nature ng research nyo?
Yung nature po.
Yeah,
I am currently kasi nagpasali-sali lang kasi ako about the thesis po, kasi I wanted to learn more kasi as what I've stated earlier, wala masyadong gina-provide sa amin na ideas. I am currently conducting a qualitative research. It is not that big po, like as what you have stated earlier, but ito lang kasi medyo naging problema na talaga. Yun lang talaga.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, at one point, feel free to also write us up, an email if you have some questions. We might be able to, give you some advice. Pero yun, siguro, just try to reach out to us, and we'll try to, come up with answers, wherever, and whenever possible. So, ganun na lang.
Thank you po. Thank you masyado.
You're welcome. Ayun. So,
I think I could probably assume the moderator, because Marty has to run for some errands.
Yep. And siguro JP, one quick thing lang, kasi I noticed this question, medyo it really caught my attention. So it was a question from Odi Montecastro. She asked a lot of questions. So this is very loaded, and I don't think we'll be able to answer this. So essentially, he or she said, I don't know if Odi is a guy or girl. Good morning po. Please provide insights po sa flow of information ng introduction sa format given po sa amin if applicable po sa thesis writing. So essentially, ang dami niyang bullet points na nilista dito, no? So, and I don't think we'll be able to cover this. But then one very important bullet point that caught my attention is that sa literature review, at least 5 years from the date of publication. So I think like that person is referring to, like yung work that they would like to refer to. So siguro ate Daang, I don't know, is this something that is legislated in the Philippines, like in terms of, kung dapat 5 years from the date of publication, yung parang I think to me, this is just this is my point, my perspective, no? Kung sino man yung thesis advisor na nagsasuggest nito, parang binibigyan naman nila ng expiration ang body of knowledge na nagawa ng mga tao. Paano po kung ang kailangan yung i-cite ay work ni Einstein? Di hindi pasok yun. So, yun lang yung gusto kong sabihin sa inyo. Don't invalidate, sa mga thesis advisors po ito, don't invalidate bodies of work just because of the date, of the publication date. If the body of work that you need to cite comes from the 1900s, then by all means, cite it. Yun po, hindi po porket pinakabago ay mas maganda. Paano po kung incremental lang yung improvement sa knowledge na nakukuha dun sa modern literature? So sana po ito po medyo I think, Janice, if you remember during our webinar, no, this was also asked. So I think medyo kumakalat to sa atin sa Pilipinas na dapat yung nasa review of literature dapat 5 years fresh Dapat, within the past 5 years, wag pong ganun. I don't think that's actually fair na turuan po natin ng mga estudyante natin ng ganyan. Kasi po, karamihan po, and I am telling you, even when it comes to chemistry, majority of the biggest discoveries were actually developed more than I think like more than 5 years ago. So paano po kung ganun? Paano kung napakaliit na improvements na lang sa knowledge ang nandyan sa 5 years na literature? So ano po yun, mga walang masyadong hindi masyadong impactful yung ilalagay nyo doon. So wag po nating i-invalidate, wag po natin bigyan ng expiration ang strong body of knowledge, ang substantial body of knowledge. Pag tanggalin po natin yan, masyado po yung elitista pero hindi naman po talaga justifiable. Tatawanan po kayo ng ng mga tao sa ibang bansa.
So hindi siya, I don't think it's legislated or something like that or mandated. Pero preference lang nung committee nila.
Yun.
Pero for me, talaga, it's a good collection of current literature and yung mga past literature. Kasi di ba naman siya review of related lit. Hindi naman sinabi review of
modern.
Current
and modern. Yeah. So yun yung parang yun yung medyo hindi ko nakikigets.
Especially kasi yung research ko were on synthesis. Ang mahalaga talaga yung ma-build up mo talaga yung seminal work kung saan siya talaga nag-start. Tapos yung mga succeeding steps, paano siya na-develop and ano ba yung meron sa ngayon. Yun yung parang approach natin sa related literature.
I think
yes.
So, if I may suggest, so para sa mga thesis advisor ngayon, sa mga mentors, siguro mas maganda, I think dapat nagbabasa din kayo para alam nyo din kung ano yung available na literature sa field ninyo. And maganda din kasi yung mga naging thesis advisor ko or even tong boss ko ngayon, yung mentor ko sa postdoc, nagsisend siya lagi ng mga literature, ng mga papers na, basahin mo yan. Like, ang daming listahan ng mga papers na sinesend nila. At hindi siya limited into like 5 years lang. Parang, hindi ibig sabihin na luma na siya, hindi na siya significant sa study mo ngayon. So, ayun. Dapat nagsisend din kayo ng mga babasahin doon sa mga thesis advices ninyo.
Yeah. Ano yun? So, yun lang. Medyo, this is the second time that we actually come across that question. Kaya this is very concerning po, and everyone in FilSciHub, like we graduated from our PhDs in like less than 10 years po. And we've had all of us have international experience when it comes to education naman and research rin. Sa Pilipinas ko lang po yan naririnig. Wala po kayong ganyan maririnig sa Amerika, sa Europa, sa leading countries in Asia. Wala po nagre-restrict kung ano po yung valid na ilagay sa review of related literature. Tanggalin nyo na po yan. Hindi po yan nakakatulong sa inyo.
All right. So we just like to entertain a couple of questions more from YouTube. So there's a question here about by Miss Rose Valerie Sanchez from YouTube. How can we make the teaching of research at this time of pandemic easier, especially for beginners? Please share some tips, Madam. Thank you and God bless.
Come again? I didn't watch it.
How can we make daw po the teaching of research at this time easier? Well, probably more easier to facilitate, especially to beginners. Research at the time of pandemic.
Okay. So, actually very tricky yung situation ngayon. Kahit ako talaga, I'm still treading along it. So, wala akong, bibigay ko lang yung current experience ko nga. So, ang ginawa ko ay, yun yung constant communication. Ba? So, kinausap ko muna yung bata na ito yung magiging thesis topic mo kasi, sorry about that. Ngayon yan, hindi na siya pwedeng mag-lab. Tapos, siguro nag-schedule pa rin kami na siguro at this point, siyempre magbabasa-basa muna siya. Kasi ang usual na approach ko, ito yung gusto kong ipagawa sa'yo. Tapos, basa ka muna kung ano sa tingin mo yung yung gusto natin, yung pwede natin mangyari. Although binigyan ko naman na siya ng mga ideas kung ano yung pwede niyang gawin. Pero sabi ko, sige, tingnan mo munang mabuti. So siguro for me, medyo i-guide mo siya, mas i-guide mo siya ngayon, remotely, kung paano niya gagawin yun. Diba? Nag-agree kayo kung ano yung i-focus niya na topic, tapos bigyan mo siya ng time, consider mo din yung current academic load niya, bigyan mo siya ng time to come up with a more concrete topic, tapos and then work from that. So, constant communication yung dapat nating ma-establish. So kung, I think magsasabi naman yung bata kung hindi niya kaya. And then on your own, siguro i-accommodate mo din. Bigyan mo siya ng logical timeline para magawa yung mga bagay-bagay.
Yep. Ayan, thank you very much. So maraming nagtatanong about an example nung thesis, a thesis output. Kaya I think I would just like to share itong paper na sinubmit nila Ma'am Daang sa Philippine Journal of Science. So I invite everyone to just take a look on this research carried out by under Ma'am Daang's supervision. So dito po just to give an idea po nung mga diniscuss ni Ma'am, so you can check it out at the Philippine Journal of Science. So pwede nyong i-download yung PDF. So readily downloadable naman po siya para po just to give an idea on how an actual research is carried out. Na magbibigay din po ng hint sa inyo kung paano isulat yung thesis itself kasi nandito yung tones tsaka yung format. So ayan, mabibigyan kayo ng idea. So I just like to ask a couple more questions from YouTube. So from Clint Irvin Mosqueda, may recommended po ba na book or author sa thesis writing na pwedeng gamitin sa pagtuturo ng high school at college level? So I think intayin natin yung book authored by Professor Joanne Aguila on thesis writing. Ayan.
Wala akong alam. Actually, lahat nung sinabi ko din sa mga students ko, most of them talaga kinuha ko from experience. Pero when I was doing the presentation, you can Google some universities, especially abroad, have some recommendations then on the formatting and stuff like that. So tweak mo na lang siya in such a way that it is more applicable to your students.
And I actually, by the way, itong FilSciHub Research University program, all the courses that JP Onya talked about earlier, from ideation all the way up to thesis writing and scientific communication. We have a plan that within a year from now, we're actually going to be writing a practical guide for teachers and students in the Philippines when it comes to research. So yun po, maglalabas kami ng libro dyan. So watch out for that. And then yung thesis writing is obviously going to be like a chapter like within that book. So that's to be authored by Professor Joanne Aguila. So maghintay lang po kayo. That's
shameless plugging na.
Yeah, no, it's because we don't have such resource in the Philippines.
Exactly. And exactly the reason why we devised this whole program. Yeah.
Research University. So yun po.
Actually, I realized then nung ginagawa ko yung presentation, hindi ko pala binigyan yung mga students ko ng somewhat ganitong presentation on how to write.
And then you can get them to watch it after, no?
Ang ginawa ko lang, ito yung dating manuscript, basahin nyo. Kung may questions kayo, i-address nyo sa akin. So, at least, at that point naman kasi medyo hands-on naman talaga yung approach ko sa mentoring sa kanila. Pero siguro, at this point, papapanood ko sa kanila itong
And I think yung itong lecture ni Ma'am Daang will be like you are already, ano ba tawag sa ganun? Nasa history ka na na ano ka na, nasa record na yung lecture na to that everyone can benefit from. So ayan, another question from Miss Alma Politano. if the thesis is publishable, can the advisor be considered as the co-author of the research once it is published? Sana naman ano.
Yan, actually, isa din yan dun sa mga first few understandings na in-establish ko sa mga students ko. Ang nasabi ko naman talaga sa kanila na ang ultimate goal ko is to have something published out of your thesis. And if it is going to be published, definitely, yung name nyo nandun kasi kayo yung gumawa. Pero tandaan nyo, doon sa publication, I don't think na-mention nyo ba to, Jeff? Kasi mini-measure mo yung contribution mo.
Yeah.
Mini-measure mo yung contribution mo doon sa publication. Actually, yung mga steps na ginagawa ng FilSciHub Research University, yun yung mga contribution. Ideation, experimentation, writing, or interpretation. Writing, yun yung mga contributions mo. And you should be able to identify kung sino yung mga tao na nandoon. Okay.
Yep.
And since yung advisor, hopefully, in my case, I will really claim it, nandun ako sa ideation, interpretation, and writing. May contribution talaga ako doon. I would expect my name to be there kapag mapapublish yung thesis ng student. Okay?
Oo, kasi parang ano, if kasi kapag ganyan yung questions, parang walang ambag yung yung advisor, no? So I don't think we'll experience like much. I don't think I've seen like much situations like that. Pero again, at the end of the day, when you write that paper up, there has to be a discussion about co-authorship, no? And I don't think students should actually students should be quite open when it comes to discussing contributions. Kasi di ba Ate Daang, and I don't think this is something that we covered in the scientific paper writing na the first name, the first author is that has a meaning, and also the last author and the one who has the asterisk, or the one we consider the corresponding author. So may bearing yun. And actually it's a very we didn't cover that Ate, perhaps like later on in
it is actually a very tricky ground to tread on in the Philippines. Just to share you, iba yung interpretation nila ng lead author sa major author, basta something like that, and I'm very surprised about it. Kasi
I think kasi sa Pilipinas, I mean, this is a fairly colored commentary, and this is just like my opinion, no. Meron din kasi nga realistic expectation na kapag advisor ka, ikaw dapat yung bida dun sa paper. And based dun naman sa experience ko working abroad, if at one point you become like very independent, even if you're a student, sometimes you can even request from pinapayagan tayo Ate ng mga advisors natin that we are the first author and the corresponding author at the same time. So people in other countries are open to that setup. But then siguro sa Pilipinas baka doon nanggagaling yung nagmumula yung friction, no? Na automatic kapag advisor ka, ikaw dapat yung bida. Parang gano'n. Siguro doon nanggagaling yung question na yun. So it all depends sa kung paano ba yung pag-uusap nyo as a team.
Can you just
simula pa lang
halagang guiding point mo doon ay mahirap man sabihin yung hanapin mo yung ambag niya.
Exactly.
Maghanap kayo ng ambag.
And just to qualify yung pong corresponding author, siya po yung author na mag-cater sa lahat ng questions about dun sa research. Kung sakaling may nagtanong about certain aspects of the research paper or the journal entry, siya yung sasagot. So naturally, siya talaga dapat yung may alam nung lahat, or 'di ba parang siya yung parang pinaka point person. So definitely kung i-accept ng advisor yung job na yon, then he should be very well involved dun sa buong research paper. Okay? Yep. So maybe a few more questions from Moring, because there has been a discussion already here on YouTube about null and alternative hypothesis. From Moring Hamero, hi ma'am, is it necessary to have an hypothesis in a thesis? If so, are we required to provide both null and alternative hypothesis. Yan po kasi ang yan po kasi ang in-advise sa study namin.
Okay.
What was the advice?
To have both the null and alternative hypothesis.
So, ang ganito yung unang question, kung required ang hypothesis.
Definitely.
Oo, medyo. Hindi ko medyo hindi ko kinaya. Pag wala pa.
Hypothesis talaga. Kailangan mo talaga ng hypothesis.
Yes.
Okay?
Apo.
With respect naman doon sa null and as such, to be honest, kasi yung nature ng research ko is synthesis, ganon. We're not somewhat really identifying those types of statements. Yun. Ano yung null hypothesis, saka ano pa nga yung sinanggit mo?
Alternative.
Also, alternative hypothesis. So, medyo hindi ako ganun ka-strict kasi yung nature ng research ko ay synthesis. So, sa synthesis, so, mimix yan, ipoprove mo na meron kang mako-collect from that, identify mo, characterize mo. Ganun yung sa akin. I don't know, maybe yung more of analytical ikaw siguro, JP, ano masasabi mo?
Dito naman po normally talagang kung ano lang yung working hypothesis, yun lang para malinaw lang po na ito lang muna yung wino-workout natin, and then kung hindi siya gumana, then that's the time that we explore the alternative hypothesis. So, and usually nandun na siya sa recommendations. Kuya Jeff?
Okay. So essentially dito makikita niyo po yung
wala kayong research, wala kayong hypothesis.
And wala pong direction ang inyong research kung wala kayong hypothesis. Kasi ano po ba ang tanong na inyong sinasagot? Yun po kasi yung that's the main point. And then secondly, so nakikita niyo po dito, depende din sa type ng research no. For example, kay Professor Joanne Aguila, since they're working on synthesis, they already have a target in mind. So it's a matter of how easy or difficult it is to make those target materials, di ba ate? So it's either you make it or you don't make it, or it's either you make it but in a fairly inefficient manner, or you make it at a high efficiency. Pagdating naman po sa analytical chemistry, as JP said, like the typical practice is such that you have a working hypothesis, and then yun muna yun, no? So yun na muna yung you're gonna work towards it, and then if it comes to a point that hindi mo ma-substantiate yun, you might actually have to formulate another one. So yun yung approach. But then siguro on the perspective naman po, kasi di iba-iba talaga yan eh. If you're a thesis advisor din naman, I think thesis advisors are also at the capacity to generate multiple hypotheses at the same time for a particular project. No, so this is not to discourage din naman to just work on one hypothesis kasi for example, iba-iba din ang students. There are students out there na sobrang diligent, na sobrang aaralin yung review of literature such that yung perspective nila dun sa area is sobrang diverse yung outcomes na possible na possible mong i-anticipate, no? So dito papasok yung you're gonna start with the most reasonable hypothesis based on your initial evaluation of the problem, but then like on hindsight, meron ka na rin naiisip na pag hindi to gumana, feeling ko ito yon. So yun yung mga possible scenarios where you can actually work on, you can establish or formulate a couple of hypotheses at the same time. But then siguro sa perspective ng mga estudyante, once you start executing or working on a thesis, one is enough.
Yep.
So kailangan, hindi din kasi maganda yung ang dami yung hypothesis. So ang mangyayari doon, you're just sobrang aimless, you're spreading yourself out too thinly.
Yep.
Sobrang dami mong sinimulan, wala ka namang matapos. Wala kang tanong na masasagot. So yun po. One at a time is okay. Most especially for beginners.
I think ganun talaga yung format na hinihingi sa kanila. Siguro yun yung dapat na hindi sa side ng students, sa side ng mga teachers. Pero tingnan natin mabuti. Kung logical ba na ibigay pa natin na ganun yung format.
Yeah, kasi yung sabi mo nga ate, di ba, na-overwhelm sila eh. Doon pa lang sa scope ng work sa isang hypothesis, na-overwhelm na ang student. So, consider it sa mga estudyante, training wheels to. But I'm telling you, I'm speaking based on my own perspective. So I'm a practicing scientist, and pagdating mo na sa real life work, at research ang trabaho mo, hindi naman din ganon. Sometimes if you actually have visualized a number of different outcomes, then that's better. You know, you are de-risking your research. Pero habang nag-aaral pa kayo, it's okay, you know, less is more sometimes. And I think most of the time, less is more.
Yep. Okay. So, I just want to read some comments. So, sa YouTube po, napakaraming words of thanks and gratitude to Professor Aguila. Sabi ni Carl Raymond Consuegra, I can listen to her all day. Napaka-effective niya as teacher. Thank you po. Thank you, Ma'am Daang. Very informative. Thank you so much. And ayun, nagtatanong kung applicable daw po yung mga points na ni-raise ni Ma'am to graduate studies. I think definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kasi sabi ko nga sa inyo, kinuha ko din yan based on my experience myself as a graduate student and handling graduate students.
Ayun. So ayun, maraming salamat daw po. And on this note, I would like to present this certificate of appreciation from us here in behalf of all the participants siguro, and also our team here at FilSciHub. We would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Professor May Joanne Aguila of the Institute of Chemistry, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, for delivering this webinar titled The Thesis Writing Process, Best Practices from a Thesis Advisor, organized by the Filipino Science Hub and held via Zoom and YouTube Live on the 12th day of June 2021. Signed, Dr. Jeffrey Bungkin, CEO and founder, Filipino Science Hub, and yours truly, Head of Research, Filipino Science Hub. So, ayan, maraming salamat po for this very comprehensive, kasi talagang tinakal ni Ma'am Daang yung whole range ng thesis process, hindi lang siya thesis writing, no? Kasi pati yung pagpili and pag-present sa thesis defense na cover ni Ma'am. So, ayan, maraming salamat po. And I think Doc Jeffrey has some announcements.
Yeah, JP, could you share the
I'll just share
the Canvas slides?
Wait a minute.
Yeah, just the last 2 slides.
Yep. There.
Okay, so sabi nga po namin, so, yeah. So siguro before this, JP. So we have a couple more web events po, no, like this month of June. So next week, same time, Saturday in the Philippines, June 19th, we have Professor Maria Catrina Vasquez de Paz from Adamson University, presenting on green chemistry principles and initiatives. So this is a very timely and relevant topic. So if students out there are actually and teachers are interested in learning more about green chemistry and research activities in this area, what a career is like in green chemistry, you should check this out. And then next slide, please. June 26th, Saturday, 2 weeks from now, we have the second installment of our STEM teaching webinar series. So this is actually the one in collaboration with Lucio Tan's foundation, FUSE, and also a reputable university in the Philippines when it comes to education. So the second installment is titled Practical and Innovative STEM Teaching, and this is to be delivered by 2 highly reputable science educators in the United States. So Professor Michelle Lansigan from American University and Professor Dendevoil. So she's also has an extensive teaching experience abroad. So yun po. So itong webinar series, like we said, there's a highly likelihood that yung participants natin will earn CPD units. So this is intended for teachers, but even yung mga students sa education who are about to practice in the next couple of years, we encourage you to participate like in all these events. So again, maraming salamat po sa inyong pagsama na naman sa amin ngayong Sabado, and please join me in thanking Professor May Joanne Aguila for her generosity. So essentially po, ang dami talaga niyang i-share sa ating lahat. Kahit kami natuto kami. So ate, maraming salamat po. And yeah, so see you all again next week. Ayun, JP.
Yep. So ang link po for the certificates is already posted on the YouTube chat and also here on Zoom. So kindly check it out. So I just want to take note na yung pong certificates natin are issued in batches. So kung hindi po ma-send, let's say in a couple of days, kindly wait lang po until ma-send sa inyo yung certificate, and kindly give us 7 days po to complete all the issuance before you inquire about your certificates. So ayun
And
po.
also, JP, yung spelling, yung
And the
correctness
spelling
ng
and
input.
yung pong please make sure yung email address nyo po is accurate. Na tama po yung kasi magba-bounce back lang po, and we don't have any other way of sending you kung mali po yung email address. So ayun, kindly double check kung tama po yung inyong email addresses. So with that, I guess we can conclude our webinar for this morning. So maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nag-participate sa amin dito sa Zoom and also via YouTube Live. So maraming salamat po. And next week, please tune in for another webinar about green chemistry by Professor Kat De Paz from the Adamson University. So ayan, maraming salamat po, and may you have a very happy Independence Day, and have a really nice weekend ahead of you. So maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po. Ingat po kayo
Salamat
palagi.
po.
And then, yeah,